to Hobart. I was coaching then. I recruited Steve to play for me there, and he had a job with a clothing store in downtown Hobart, and the club had provided him with a car. I don't know, probably 25 years old. He didn't know anything about parking in Australia and so on, so he went down and parked close to the clothing store, and when the day was over, he had a parking ticket that the amount exceeded what he had made that day's work. But then it got a little, there was a little more money involved as things went on, and some players were becoming full-time players, and Adelaide, I think, was pretty progressive in that area. But it took Melbourne clubs pretty much rejected the NBL in the beginning outside of Nunawading. And eventually Lindsay brought the Tigers into it. To his credit, he took his licks early on because he didn't have the right import players. It just his personnel wasn't suited, even though they had Andrew. And then eventually he won the championship twice to his credit. And Albert became again a hot spot for Australian basketball.
Yeah, that's it. I grew up in Perth, and so in the 90s, and so that was it, because every team was great. You weren't sure. I knew we were good. We were the best. Are you playing the Melbourne Tigers? You've got Leonard Copeland to Andrew Gase. Are you playing Adelaide? They were awesome. Every team had a good collection of play, like an awesome collection of play. Sydney Kings were off the hook. And it was just a certain magic era. Did you witness it blow up? Do you know why it blew up? Was it to do with the Olympics and Michael Jordan, or what was going on there around that time?
I think the league got ahead of itself. They were moving into large, big city arenas, and as I recall, the Melbourne clubs are playing in the tennis center in the wintertime, in the Australian winter, and they were playing their games on Thursday evenings. That's the only dates they could get on several occasions, and they just didn't draw. It was bad weather. It was a midweek game. There were exceptions. Big games had big crowds. Brisbane moved from Auchenflower, which seated about 1,500, to Boondall, which was seated, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11,000. So they took big jumps from small gymnasium-type places to large arenas. And I don't know, the marketing just didn't keep up, and it was not coming out financially is what happened. They had to take a step back. And now this relationship with the NBA and so on, it's a totally different situation. And I imagine by far the best basketball ever played, because they're using 3 imports, and all of them have either NBA time or are with an NBA team, property of, or have been drafted or something like that. Now, we had a few players back in the 80s that had been drafted, but no one. Ricky Grace spent some time with the Atlanta Hawks. I had a good story about Ricky as far as how he got to Australia.
Let's hear it, because let's hear that one.
Okay. Brian Curl was visiting me in Des Moines. And I don't remember the exact year that Ricky came to like early 90s maybe. And we went down to Rock Island, Illinois, which is the CBA team had a Quad City Thunder down there, and it was their free agent camp. And I heard that there's got several good players in there that probably wouldn't stick, and that's the people I was looking for. And Ricky was one of them. And Ricky played really well through that camp. And I made a note of him. I don't even talk to him down there. And then he went back to Dallas, and he had, I tried to follow up, and he said he had an agent. So I called this agent, and the guy was really not a certified MBA agent or anything. He was just a young lawyer who was looking after Ricky a little bit, so he wasn't really vested in it. And he was very pleased that there was an opportunity. So I asked him to send Ricky up to Des Moines, and Cal Bruton came to Des Moines too. They both stayed with Dave and I, and we went over to a high school gym the night they arrived, and they were playing one-on-one. And Ricky and Cal was really shredding Ricky. He was scoring like crazy. I was still the ball. I called Ricky over. And I said, Ricky, don't mistake what's going on here. This is a tryout for a job. This is not a one-on-one. You better show us what you got. And from then on, he lifted greatly and made it tough on Cal. And the next day, we made a deal. Ricky went. I don't recall whether he went back with Cal or he came a little bit later, but that's how he got it.
Ricky said that. So he said, I've pre-interviewed him for one of these, and I said, how'd you get down to Australia? He'll tell us the background story. And he said, well, actually, I was at a camp, something or other, and Steve Carfino came back, and he'd been down in Australia and he's playing lights out, and they're like, he said, they call me Mr. Magic down there in Australia. And Ricky in his head went, they call you Mr. Magic. I wonder what they're going to call me. And that was it. He was sold. He must have talked to you at that next moment. And then he's down there.
Yeah, that's right. Steve was at that CBA camp in Rock Island. Steve had played. I coached Steve for 2 years and recruited him and so on. Steve had played that first year with us. And then he was back in the States, and he went to that CBA camp, was supposed to be maybe a stepping stone to the NBA, and Ricky was there also. But there was no big issues on transfer or leaving a CBA team in those days. That's been remedied because players were leaving right, left, and center in the middle of the court, in the middle of the season. Yeah, but that's interesting. I didn't realize that took place, but I can see it happening as they were both at that camp.
Ricky came down, and obviously we called him Amazing Grace, fantastic nickname, and he's probably be one of the best players that we've had, really. Longevity, still lives here in Perth. And who was the best import that you saw that you just feel was the standout in the NBL?
The best import that I sent to the NBL?
Yeah, let's do both. So let's do the best that you set. Well, is it the same person or?
I am not current with some of these guys that are coming in now.
Oh, yeah. So just 80s, 90s, 70s, 80s, 90s, just that retro cool period that now is retro, but was current back then. That sort of explosion of those guys. Who was the guy for you?
Oh, I would have to name 3 or 4. I'd say Cal Bruton packed, and Ricky was another one. James Crawford would have been another one. Think just a minute. Leon Trimmingham a little later on did a good job. Leon Trimmingham played professionally till he was nearly 40 years old.
Yeah. Leon, let's talk about Leon for a second. Tell us Leon's story, because I think he was probably one of my favorite players. What was his nickname? Above the rim. And I think that's what the game was attractive at that point. You're looking at guys throwing a Copeland, throwing down alley-oops and stuff. It was like a flashy kind of game, and it was right here. You could go and watch these things. And but when Trimmingham came in, that was like a whole different level of athleticism.
Yeah, it was probably, that was his first job. He was just 22 years old, but he played at a small college in Iowa, and I had more or less followed him through his career. He's from the Virgin Islands, and that school, they had a connection with the Virgin Islands, and there were several really good players from there that played for Rucker If College. But Leon, his senior year, ironically, Nick Nurse was the Raptors coach. Nick Nurse was the head coach at Grandview College, and these are 2 small schools that played each other. And Rucker If came to Grandview in Des Moines, where I was at the game, and I saw Leon play. And he's really rough around the edges. He didn't have much footwork, and he didn't have much of a shot. He was jumping all over the place, dunking and this and that. So after the season ended, Nick and I became good friends, and we ran a camp at Grandview College, and we invited a bunch of players for me to look at for the NBL, and Leon was one of them. And he came down, and played pretty well. And I said, he had an agent in Chicago, and the agent, all they did was sign him, and he didn't get him a job. And I said, you drop that agent, I'll maybe get you a job in Australia. And he did. And then Mario Donaldson was playing really well in the CBA.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
And so Bobby Turner came over from Australia and stayed with us. And I rented a gym one night and got a bunch of players from Des Moines and threw Leon and Mario in there, and they played. So Bobby got a chance to watch them. And afterwards, he said, I'll take them both. So that's how they were introduced to Bobby Turner. And Mario was a veteran player and had been around, but Leon had never had a job outside of college.
Yeah.
So he had his ups and downs, but at Sydney, but he put up some big numbers, quite an exceptional jumper, no matter where he is. And he got better. Let's see, I got him into an NBA camp with Philadelphia. Ron Adams, who was an assistant there, who's the defensive guru for the Golden State Warriors now. He was the link, and I remember going out to Pennsylvania to Franklin and Marshall College, and it was the Friday evening session, and I got there. When I walked in the gym, Ron Adams and John Lucas, who was the head coach, both of them came running up and said, Leon's really something. He said he just blocked this attempted dunk by Sean Bradley. And Sean was a 7'7" guy.
Yeah.
But Leon
was Sean Bradley.
They wanted to use Leon as a wing player, and he just didn't have the skills at the time. He was mainly just an inside roamer, is what he was. He roamed around the basket.
Yeah.
And he didn't have the ball skills out on the floor. He was cut. But then he was on his way to Sydney anyway. Or he had been in Sydney anyway, and going back. So he had a good run in Australia. He had spent his last year, as I recall, in Adelaide. Maybe his last 2 years was Adelaide. But then he went. I got him a job in Germany. He played in Germany. I got him a job in Japan. And he did a good job there. And then he went to South America. I can't remember what happened from there. But I'm in touch with Leon. He contacts me every now and then.
That's amazing. So you didn't. It wasn't just you bringing guys to Australia. You were sort of interacting with the whole world.
And I placed a lot of players. When Nick Nurse was the coach of the Raptors when they won the championship in 2019. That was his first year.
Coach of the year, wasn't it? Yeah.
He's from a small town in Iowa. I've known him a long time. But we've been. In fact, I introduced him through the NBA, through some people I know. He was coaching in this small college, and I was going to the preseason or pre-draft camps and the LA Summer League, and they had a pre-draft camp in Salt Lake City and one in Phoenix, and I was going to all those. So Nick went along with me on one of those trips, and he was just blown away by the talent level and everything. He said, I want to be a pro coach, not a college coach.
Yeah.
And Ron Adams, again, was an important link. Ron was with Golden State then, and he introduced Nick to a few people. And then Nick coached in England for 11 years, so I sent him several players in England. And he came back and coached in the D-League, and then has gone on to great success in the NBA.
Yeah, what's it like? You see your guys, like Nick Nurse, they're, in the NBA. What does it feel like? Do you feel like the grandfather of the basketball programs, or how does it work?
I don't know. Nick has been very good to me and shared his celebrity. In fact, he even awarded me with the 2019 NBA championship ring for my part in his career.
You got a ring?
Yeah, I do. I'll email it to you if you want to see it. But Nick is special.